Guys, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Friday Playday. We're doing a lunchtime one today, which is a bit of a change from what we normally do, but it's exciting. I hello. Perfect. We have Lenny's brothers. Here she comes. Let's add her in. Perfect. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
You can hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you just great.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah,
I'm so
thanks for
excited.
having me. It's gonna be a good chat.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. So for everyone who's kind of starting to join in now, this is Lenise Brothers of Eat Love Move, which I love the handle and like pretty much sums up my life, which is great. But yeah, so we're gonna be talking today about menstrual health, women's health, how to live, eat with your cycle, all this kind of fun stuff. Pretty much all the stuff that you do day to day, and obviously something that is a massive part of my day to day as well. So it's kind of great to actually get you on chatting about it, which is fab. So thanks a million.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. So do you want to give a little introduction to everyone about kind of who you are, what you do, what the vibe is?
Yeah, sure. I'm Lenny's brothers. I'm a registered nutritionist and I specialize in women's health, hormones, and the menstrual cycle. I'm also a yoga teacher and I have a podcast called Period Story. And I work in this space because I'm really passionate about helping women understand their bodies, understand their menstrual cycle, and learn the opportunity it gives them to affect different areas of their lives. So, well, how they move their bodies, how they work, all of the different areas that the menstrual cycle affects. I just love that education piece. So that's
Yeah.
that's what I do.
Super. Yeah, no, I love it. I love all of your posts as well. Kind of big fan of your content. I'm trying to actually remember how it came across you originally, but I remember I could join a couple of yoga classes and I was like, oh, this gal's great. And then you started doing the lives as well, and I was just
Oh,
like, yeah, perfect.
yeah.
For the story, so it's good. But like, how did you kind of get into it yourself? Like, did you always know you wanted to be a nutritionist or a yoga teacher, or is it something that you kind of started doing yourself and then wanted to make a career out of it, or how did that
Yes.
all
So
happen?
I actually worked in advertising for 15 years.
Okay.
So different space, basically getting people to buy things is what I did in
Yeah.
a kind of nutshell. But I had always had problems with my periods, and I spent a lot of time using food, sleep, different lifestyle changes to try to change my period for the better. Um,
Hmm.
I think that I probably have mild endometriosis, but
Okay.
it was never kind of diagnosed or verified. But then I got pregnant and I was pretty burnt out anyway. Got pregnant and decided that
Mm.
I wanted to explore something else. And so I had always been interested in health and I decided to retrain as a nutritionist, did all of
Brilliant.
that, decided to specialize in women's health because they say write what you know. So I decided to
Yeah.
specialize in what was relevant to me. And yeah, and then I've just been in this space ever since, really enjoying it,
Super.
really loving the impact that the work that I do can have on others.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's brilliant. Like I actually have a similar background where like I would have worked in the good old corporate world and then as a product manager as well, and then kind of came back into this. So yeah, no, it's cool. I think that happens to a lot of people where you just like go through something yourself that you want to then help other people go who are going through something similar, and kind of share the education that you learned, and so I think that's, yeah, it's fantastic. It's such a, I don't know about you, but I find it so rewarding to kind of do that sort of work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so rewarding to know that the work that your knowledge, your education can help change the lives of others in such significant ways.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like, so how, I guess, give us like a typical day. Like, how do you tend to work with your clients if someone kind of gets in contact with you and they're kind of looking to kind of work with you on something in specific? How would that work?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I typically work with my clients on a 3 month, 12-week basis. And
Okay.
that gives us three menstrual cycles, three periods to see what's going on with their period, start to add in food. So my approach is very much about what can we add? It's not
Hmm.
let's take out sugar, let's take out gluten, let's take out dairy. That's not how I
Yeah.
work. I I'm very much about let's add, let's see what's missing in your meals, and let's see what we can add, and then through that kind of additive effect, appetite starts to change, sleep starts to change, and eventually we see changes in the period and the menstrual cycle. And all
Mm.
of it is really structured around helping my clients change their habits and build healthier habits, which then they can carry on through to the rest of their life. So I
Yeah.
always want to be redundant to my
Yeah.
clients by the by the end of our time working
Absolutely.
together. Yeah,
Yeah, and I do think like again, I kind of take a habit-based approach because I really do think that's just the key to sustainable change. You know, like you can all go on a meal plan. Sorry, sometimes meal plans are really appropriate and need to them, but for a lot of us, we just need to know how to change slowly and steadily those behaviors that we have and kind of
yeah.
to get support guiding through that and kind of have someone kind of, as I said, guide you through that. So it's brilliant that I love that you said you want to be redundant by the end of it.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's
Um,
I
and
don't want
then,
I sorry, just to say was one last thing. I never want my clients
mm,
to feel like they have to rely on me in order to
yeah,
know what to eat after we finish working together.
yeah, absolutely. I just want to double check, am I coming through slowly for you at all, or is there feedback or anything?
There's a little feedback, but let's just keep going.
Okay, cool. If we need to stop and start again, we can always do that,
Yeah.
but hopefully it should be all right. I got a couple of questions, both from kind of myself because I loved kind of the posts that you do, but also kind of a couple of few questions came through on the little question box that I had, and it was kind of all around different foods to, I guess, support different stages of your menstrual cycle. I know this is obviously something that you post about a lot as well, so I kind of
Yeah.
wanted to ask you those to kind of share on that. But like the first one, I guess obviously ovulation we all know, or at least for people who work in this space or who might be a little bit aware of that, like how important ovulation is. So like what would you recommend in a very general sense? And I know obviously you can't like diagnose or, anything like that, but in a very general sense, what would you recommend for people to eat or do to try and support ovulation?
So, yeah, great question because ovulation is like I love at this as the kind of central point of our menstrual cycle.
Hmm.
It's kind of where when we produce progesterone, which is like the counterbalance of estrogen, which tends to be higher in the first
Yeah.
half of our cycle. And so one of the biggest things that you could do to support ovulation is to actually look at how much stress you're under and how you're sleeping because our body
I'm
wants us.
actually gonna I can't actually hear what you're saying at the minute. So I'm gonna try one thing. So if you feel free to kind of keep saying what you're saying on that, and I'm just gonna
Okay.
see if I can adjust my Wi-Fi because it's coming back really. This hasn't happened before, but I'm kind of hoping that I can fix it while I'm on
Uh,
the call to you because
okay.
I want to know more. So keep chatting about what you're saying
Okay.
about ovulation. I'll be back in 2 seconds.
Okay. So basically with ovulation, our bodies want us to release an egg in a really healthy environment. Our bodies want us to feel great, and be calm, rested. And when we're overly stressed, our bodies go into what we call the sympathetic nervous system, which we know is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
Yeah.
And then it kind of downregulates our reproductive function. It downregulates ovulation. So you might find that there are times where you're super stressed or you've got a lot
Mm.
going on. Like maybe at the beginning of the first lockdown, it was just really, really stressful. Especially like kids being out of school, routines changing, all of that. And so
Yeah.
what I saw was a lot of my clients saying to me, like, I don't think I ovulated this cycle. And
Mm.
then when you don't ovulate, you don't produce progesterone, which is, our calming hormone. It's what we need to kind of counterbalance estrogen. And so, really taking a hard look at the different stressors in your life and how you're managing that stress. And I'm not going to say don't be stressed because that's just like so annoying.
Just live in a
Because
bubble. Just live
yeah,
in a bubble.
yeah,
You just don't need to interact with anyone else.
it's but it's also really like look at how you're taking time for yourself across the
Mm.
day. So how you're what I like to call those taking in those little moments of pause throughout the day. So like simple one, it's lunchtime now. So are you actually taking your lunch break or are you working through?
Yeah.
Are you just taking like simple moments, like taking time to breathe? And yes, yes, we have to breathe, but it's it's kind of
The deep
that
breathing.
that deep breathing, that kind of deep belly breathing that is just
Mm.
so beautiful and so beneficial and helps shift our nervous system to a calmer place, which
Yeah.
then affects our ability to ovulate and then produce progesterone. From
Yeah.
a food perspective, um, eggs, for example, are a beautiful thing to eat to support ovulation because they contain a lot of zinc, which we need to produce progesterone. They contain choline, which is really important for the outer lining of the egg that we produce. Um,
Hmm.
Eggs are almost like they're kind of like the perfect food. They contain
Yeah.
so many nutrients, and so I love it when my clients who do eat eggs, because yes, I have some
Yeah.
vegan clients who do eat eggs add those into their diet, into their meals regularly.
Yeah.
Um, so those are
And
kind
this
of
is the whole egg, isn't it? Just to, because I know there's some people out there who use just egg whites specifically if they're kind of into the fitness world, but this is all the good stuff is in the yolk.
yeah. Well, the egg whites are full of protein, which
Mm.
I find that women don't eat enough protein,
No.
and it's so
Like,
satiating.
yeah.
Yes, it's important for building muscle mass, but it's also really satiating. Um,
Hmm.
But then you have the yolk, which is incredible. It's full of good fats, which are so important for hormone production, like estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. They're steroid hormones, so they're made from
Yeah.
fat.
Yeah. No, it's good. I know like there's this kind of whole thing about the cholesterol and eggs and everything, but really like firstly that's kind of shown to not necessarily be the case. And also the fact that there's so much good stuff in the yolks as well, and also just tastes delicious.
Yeah.
Like, I'm such a big fan of eggs, and if people who are used to like following me and my partner, he makes like eggs all the time. We always have like hard boiled eggs and everything. So like it's just yeah, I'm glad that's one of the ones. And then again, like that would kind of leads into the next one, which is I guess that like boosting progesterone. And I know it's kind of like a trick question almost because if you want to boost progesterone, you need to support ovulation to make sure that you're doing it. But I guess is there anything in particular to kind of help the progesterone like continue through or maybe make sure that you're kind of producing enough of it, or is it always coming back to that sort of the ovulation, like what you typically kind of advise to people who are asking those
It
questions?
it always comes back to ovulation. If you're not
Mm.
ovulating, you're not making progesterone. But equally, you could be ovulating and not making enough progesterone. So
Yeah.
you want to kind of look at the things that I mentioned earlier, as in looking at your stress, looking at your sleep, really making sure you're eating lots of those whole foods I mentioned. So eggs are a big one. Also looking at um, your immune system. So uh,
Hmm.
when our body wants us to release an egg in a really healthy environment. So we talked about stress, but our immune
Yeah.
system is part of that as well. So really making sure that you have a strong immune system. So you're eating your kind of antioxidants, eating the rainbow, eating vitamin
Yes.
D, and all of that will help you ovulate well and produce more progesterone.
Yeah. I love that you said eat the rainbow because that's one of the things that I like really try and advocate with my clients during my talks. And everyone's like, what? And
Yeah,
I'm like, just try and get as many colours in because and I'm guilty of it as well. We tend to just go to the shops and buy the same types of fruit and veg over and over again. You know what I mean? And we kind of, it's so important that we mix it up because like that's how we'll get all that lovely mix of different like micronutrients because like our bodies just love different things. And you can find some great like color wheels of different fruit and veg online, which I'm a big fan of as well because it does take a little bit of thinking. You think it's easy, but then
yeah,
actually you just realize you like have bought like a cucumber and peppers 3 weeks in a row, you know?
yeah,
And you're like, okay, I need to try and spice it up a little bit, like get
yeah,
some beetroots and stuff. But and then obviously, when we think about the hormones being in balance, one of the big things, and you kind of see it a lot on Instagram at the minute, is kind of the whole idea of detoxifying estrogen and making sure that we're actually able to kind of process it out through the body. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and what that means and, how do we actually kind of help our bodies do that?
yeah. So that's such a great point because we want estrogen and progesterone to be in balance. And
Yeah.
not we've talked about the ovulation side of it and producing enough progesterone, but equally
Hmm.
you need to make sure that your body is able to break down and eliminate the hormones that it has already used. And we do that through our gut, so our small and our large intestine, and through our
Mm.
liver. And then you also clear everything out through your bowel movements. So the biggest
Yeah.
thing that you can do, and you might be listening to me and thinking, "Oh, she's just bringing everything back to basics," but they're basics for a reason. The biggest
Absolutely.
thing you can do is to have a bowel movement every single day.
Yeah.
And that's where we clear out all of the estrogen that our body's broken down, the thyroid hormone, the testosterone, the progesterone. So having a daily bowel movement is so, so important to make sure that the estrogens in particular that your body has broken down don't get recirculated back into
Mm.
the body. We don't want that to happen.
Okay. Yeah. And let's say you've got a client and they come in, they're like, oh, I'm definitely not having a bowel movement today. Because again, a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about it. So a lot of people kind of go for such a long kind of time without really talking about this or raising it up with anyone. And they just kind of think it's, I guess, like normal. But, we both know that it's so important to get it in. But like, so if someone comes to you or someone's listening to this now and they're like, oh God, that's definitely not me. What typically would you recommend? And again, generalized here. Obviously, we
Yeah.
can't kind of give kind of individual advice, but in a general sense, what would you recommend?
So, and we go back to what we were saying before about eating the rainbow. So
Hmm.
we talked about the colors, but then we also need to think about the fruit and vegetables themselves. So the fiber that we get
Yeah.
through those fruits and vegetables, the fiber that we get in nuts, seeds, legumes, pulses, whole brown bread, brown rice, all of that fiber is basically helping. It's really beneficial for the gut, and then it helps us move all of the food and everything else that's been metabolized and digested through the body out through the colon and out of the body in a bowel movement. The other area to
Super.
think about is just to make sure that you're drinking enough water. Um,
Mm.
because we do eliminate some hormones through our urine. So if you're dehydrated, then that's going to have a negative effect on your hormone balance as well. So then that water or like that liquid that you're getting through the kind of water, high water fruits and vegetables is
Hmm.
also really beneficial for preventing constipation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's so important. I think like people often forget about the water, and some of those things like flax seeds and linseeds and all this kind of stuff can like help, but like or like chia seeds. I was like, oh, it's amazing, it keeps you regular, but only if you're drinking enough liquid to actually help them absorb that water and expand and then kind of pass through it. And I think it's very easy for us to go day to day without drinking enough, and I'm guilty of it as well. Like we all do. We're like, oh God, I've actually drank more coffee than I've drank. But like, it's good to remember that, like, teas and stuff, Matt, like count towards that and everything. It doesn't just have to be plain water, because I think some people do get a bit like, oh, the taste of it. So like sparkling water, throwing in lemon, or having a herbal tea, like all of that kind of counts towards it, which I think is so
Yeah.
important to remember as well.
Yeah,
And as well, I was just
absolutely.
looking at the comments, so I'm glad that everyone could hear you. So it was on my side, basically live in an old building. So sometimes the old box, the Wi-Fi gets blocked by the walls.
Oh,
I need to do a little reshuffle. So I'm glad that everyone else could hear you. So that was just on my side, so that's good. Um, and then yeah, I guess like one of the things, I'm obviously a big fan, so I follow kind of all the stuff. And you put up recently that you're launching a PCOS course. So do you want
yeah.
to like chat a little bit about that? Because again, it's something that is common enough. Like a lot of women kind of do have it. And so so I'd love to kind of hear what's the deal with that, and kind of what's going on and what you'd
Yeah.
be covering.
So, I'm launching a course with Parla, which is a
Hmm.
fertility website and app, and it's looking at PCOS and nutrition. Um,
Super.
PCOS, women with PCOS can have issues with fertility, not
Mm.
always, but they can do. And so it's a 6 week course looking at nutrition for identifying the different types of PCOS, nutrition for PCOS, looking at mindset, lifestyle changes. There's some blood testing included so that we can
Hmm.
have a real firm um, quantitative basis for
Yeah.
the course, and everyone can have a really good feel about what's going on for them. Um, and so that launches on the 24th of March. If you go onto my
Super.
page, I have lots of information about it. It should be great. I'm really excited. There's some
Yeah.
discounts that we've arranged with some really cool brands like Detox Kitchen, and there's a private Facebook community that we're creating so that everyone gets to chat and feel like part of like a group that is really geared towards healing.
Yeah. Savage. And I know that you talk about healing a lot and everything, and it's such an important part of it, because I think a lot of times, and obviously, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but sometimes I can feel like a lot of times the message that's put out there is about like fixing or like perfect health, and kind of trying to like, it almost causes a stress itself thing, because you're like, oh my God, I like didn't drink everything out of a glass bottle, and I didn't do this, and I didn't eat my all my rainbow vegetables, and it almost can become a bit, stressful in itself, trying to achieve this like perfect thing and fix all the things that are wrong with this. But kind of to your point earlier, like you can't totally avoid stress and everything. So I think your focus on healing is such a lovely word.
Yeah.
I think it's such a positive word.
Yeah, I do love the word healing because it implies that it's not the onus isn't just on you. It implies
Mm,
that, there's a community out there that can help you. And it's not, it gets us away from this idea of quick fixes and,
yeah,
you just do one thing and then you're done, which is, we both know that this is not the case. But it
yeah,
also, I don't really like talk a lot about the word wellness because it
mm,
implies like it's like a superlative. You kind of, there's a goal of like,
yeah,
being the best, possible at being well, which I just
yeah,
think that it just, I personally don't love it.
yeah,
Um, so healing and just taking it step by step and looking at what's available for you, I just think is so great. And even what I love to say is just looking at one thing. And
mm.
I don't know if you remember, like maybe about 8 or 9 years ago, there was a Boots advert around New Year's, and it was called Just One Thing. And
Oh no, I don't remember,
yeah, it
but I
was
like it.
basically, yeah. So it was basically saying instead of having a whole list of New Year's resolutions, you
Mm,
just focus on one thing and do that one thing really, really well. And then once you've got that down, you then build from there. And I really love
yeah,
that because we can focus more on just doing one thing. The research around habits shows that integrating one thing into something else you're doing makes it more likely that that habit will stick.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so that's kind of like the kind of guiding principle of a lot of the work that I do.
Yeah, love it. Like speaking to me like all the stuff that I love. I'm like, yes, habit stacking, all of this, because it is. It. I do think things are starting to change in the media, which is lovely. But I think historically, women in particular do kind of get bombarded with the messages of like a 6 week shred and like all this kind of stuff. And like again, it might have been a thin ideal, but now it's kind of replaced it with like a wellness or optimum health ideal, which
Yeah.
is just not the case. You know what I mean? Again, like unless you're living in a glass bubble where you don't interact with anything or anyone, or there's always going to be something that you're kind of dealing with or struggling with, because that's just kind of part of being life. But it's trying to. So I think that focus on one thing is like it's great, and it's just it's so much more manageable then,
Yeah.
which I think is so important. Um, and yeah, it's brilliant. I think as well, I know a couple other people were asking, and I forgot to ask it earlier, but about PMS as well, because obviously, we kind of talked about all the different stages of the cycle, and PCOS is a big one, but um, PMS affects such a high percentage of women. So, like, is that something that you come across a lot when you're working with your clients when they're tracking their cycle, and kind of how do you, I guess, kind of guide them through that, or what are your recommendations for anyone who is suffering from PMS quite badly?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things I would say around PMS is to understand what's happening for you. So
Mm,
start to track your symptoms. Know that, okay, what is PMS for you? Because it's a catch-up called term
yeah.
covering a lot of different symptoms. Is it anxiety? Is it depression? Is it bloating? Is it pain? So what is it? When does it start? How long does it occur before your period? And then
Hmm.
look at that over a number of cycles. So you're able to say, well, actually, 3 days before my period, I start to get little pains in my legs, and I start to notice that my energy is lower and I maybe
Mm,
crave sugar a bit more. So you're able to say, move on from this kind of general, I'm PMSing, to
yeah.
having a more specific, being able to say specifically about what's happening for you, and for how long. And then once you know the type of PMS you're experiencing, and the frequency and when it's taking place, then you can start to actually address it. Because the way you would address bloating isn't necessarily the same way that you would address anxiety or depression. Um,
Mm,
so that's kind of my top tip around
yeah.
PMS.
It's brilliant. I love it because it is so individual, and it's it's one of the things that I really push as well, just trying to like get people to understand what their cycle is like. And again, people can get fixated on what their cycle should look like, but it's not always going to be the case for everybody. People are going to react to hormones differently, or have different levels of hormones, and have different lengths of cycles and stuff. So I think that's like such a great piece of advice, just to like focus on what's going on for you, spot your patterns, and then try and address that rather than just kind of blanket bombing, adding loads of different things.
Yeah.
And I guess like again, I just love like the little infographics you put up. Like for you, what are your like top tips for a healthy cycle? Like your general advice to kind of everyone out there. Like what are your big rocks?
Yeah, so kind of just summarizing some of the things I've already said
Mm,
in this conversation. So really making sure that you're getting not only enough sleep, but really good quality sleep. Really looking at those moments of pause throughout the day. So it's not like I'm gonna reduce my stress, but rather how can I rest differently throughout the day or
mm,
differently based on where I am in my cycle. So like when I'm ovulating, so I'm personally about to ovulate, and I know that my tendency is to just to overschedule. And I have to be
mm,
really intentional about how I use my energy during this time. So I do more deep breathing. I'm really intentional about not saying, no, I'm not gonna just schedule my day from like 8 till 3 o'clock when I have to do the school pickup. Um, so really looking at rest as something active
Mm,
that you do every day. Then, of course, from a nutrition perspective, it's looking at the variety of fruits and vegetables that you're eating every day. And if you have trouble eating or you find it challenging eating fruits and vegetables, well, I would say pick one meal and see how you can add more to that one meal.
mm.
So I always say smoothies because they're such an easy way to just pack
Yeah.
a ton of stuff
Sneak
in.
sneak it in. Get the
Yeah,
spinach in. You don't taste it. It looks weird, but you can't taste it, I promise.
yeah. Um, but also like don't be afraid of frozen veg or fruit and
Mm,
veg or canned fruit and veg. And there's a snobbishness around it, but often like frozen veg and fruit, they're frozen right after they get picked. So there
yeah.
can be more nutritious than fresh fruit and veg. Um, and then also I'd say just look at your like have look at your community. We've spent so much time indoors over the past year looking at
Mm,
screens, and now we're starting to have the opportunity to see people in real life again. And you can never undervalue the power of connection,
mm.
and community, and how much that can really affect not only our nervous system, but our overall happiness, which then affects our hormone and menstrual health.
Yeah. Because I think, and to your point earlier, when we first went into lockdown, which is like pretty much a year ago now,
Yeah,
like all the stuff came out. Everyone was like, "Has your cycle gone weird? My cycle's gone weird. Here's a
yeah,
survey. Has your cycle like let's actually try and track this?" Because I think across the globe, like everyone just went like weird, like either it was really bad PMS, or cycles got really long or really short, or like things were like different every month. And like
yeah.
it does make such a big difference. And now like here in Ireland, we're got a little bit further to go because we've been pushing it out. So we just need to try and get all the vaccines. But anyway, but it is, I think, even the fact that the weather is getting better now, and I know things are starting to change faster in the UK, but like at least over here, we're able to meet someone outside, or at least to like go outside because the weather is a bit more, I guess, supportive of outdoor activities than it has been over the past few weeks. So I think that does just make such a difference. And like, you know, I think your tip about getting the time in throughout the day to wind down, because it's so easy, and it's almost like, if for me, I find if I don't schedule that in, the day's gone. Like Monday, case in point, I was like, oh, I'll just send this email quickly now after my lunchtime pints, and then all of a sudden it was like 4:30, and I had to go get ready for my evening groups, and I was like, I haven't left the house. And then I went out in the evening, but it's not the same as when you're getting out during the day, and you're just like, so block it in.
Yeah, yeah, definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
it's such a thing. And sorry, I have to ask because I'm so curious. I saw you post this up as well. You're talking about a book coming
Oh,
out soon?
yeah, yeah,
Next year?
yeah. So my book is going to be published next March. So
Exciting.
March 2022. So I'm literally writing it right now. Um,
Super.
So I'm really excited about it because I just love being able to share information, help people have better menstrual cycles and periods,
Mm,
but in a really clear, easy to understand way. So the book is going to be, it's not going to be full of like medical jargon. It's going to be
mm,
like when I write my posts, I always think, is would I be have been able to understand this before I got into this world? That's the kind of
yeah.
the litmus test that I always use. And that's the kind of principle that I apply. And I think I have a post-it note on my desk somewhere, and it says, "Write the book that you wanted to read when you first had your period." So
Oh, love it. That's
yeah,
great.
yeah. So yeah, March next year, that's when it's coming out.
Savage. And can we know anything about what may or may not be in it, or is that like TBC under wraps?
No, no, no. So it's basically looking at each phase of the menstrual cycle,
Hmm.
doing a deep dive into each phase, what's happening hormonally, physically, what we can do through food, movement, lifestyle to affect each part of the menstrual cycle. So it's building on the work that you see on my Instagram,
Mm,
but it's going into much more detail. and it will be all in one place. So, you don't have to scroll through my page. You can just look at my book and just pick out the tips that
Yeah.
you need for wherever you are in your menstrual cycle.
My long list that I put up the other day for World Book Day, of all the books that I have to read.